It was on Friday. Would have been the anniversary of his birthday. But I thought it was a great reminder for us all, a good way to kick off the meeting, encouraging everyone to be participants in the election process. And of course, that gets complicated for independents in Pennsylvania. We'll talk about that a little bit later in the meeting. So we are a minute past the hour. I'm sure a few more people will join us, but we're going to go ahead and get started. Welcome. Thank you all for taking time out on this St. Patrick's Day to be with us. Our monthly statewide meetings are always the third Monday of the month. We try to keep that routine so it's easy for people to remember when to join us, and hopefully that rhythm is brings some familiarity to those who attend regularly and can help keep your calendar straight. We appreciate you taking time, and hopefully as the meeting progresses, you'll have some things to contribute. We'd love to hear both from the chat, and we'll have plenty of opportunity for people to join the conversation. So thank you all for being here. This is the agenda for tonight. We'd like to take a minute at the beginning of the meetings to talk about just building democracy across the state and some collaborative partners. We actually have someone that does a lot of work with March on Harrisburg joining us. So we're going to have Danny speak in just a minute and share some of the actions that they have going on. And then we're going to talk a little bit about open primaries and some of the bills, both nationally and within the state. And just kind of tease the conversation and hopefully I'd like to hear some thoughts from everyone on the good and the bad of some of the actions that are taking place. I have the date April 20th in there, which has already given Ben heartburn because he'll tell you that's too late. But that date should mean something, hopefully, to everyone here. It's just a reminder that's the last day to be able to change your registration if you want to be a candidate this year, and that means your registration change has to be complete by that date. But we'll circle back to that later on, and then again there will be plenty of time for question and answer. So with that agenda in place, I just wanted to welcome Danny. We do not know each other. I appreciate you taking the time to be here with us tonight. I think you're still here.
He messaged in the chat that he had to jump off because his mic wasn't working, but he should have jumped back on.
Oh, he'll be right back on. Okay. So there he is. March on Harrisburg is one of the other pro-democracy groups in the state of Pennsylvania. They do a lot of work that Danny's been active in. And Danny, I was just saying, we haven't had a chance to meet yet. Andrea helped to connect us. She's one of the staff members with March on Harrisburg. I appreciate you taking the time to join us tonight. I understand we're both in Westmoreland County. So
we are. Yeah.
I'm right in New Kensington. So hopefully we'll have a chance to meet in person if we haven't already. Maybe we were at the coffee event together.
We were at the Ranked Coffee together. Yes.
Awesome.
You recognize me because I was wearing a bright yellow hoodie.
So. Okay, great. Well, thank you for being here tonight, and the floor is yours.
Sure. So hello, everybody. I'm Danny Westfall. And I'm here to talk about March on Harrisburg, where I am part of some of their team leads and legislative team groups. I did want to start by kind of sharing how I got started with the organization, to share a little bit about the actual organization and how we've also grown. So just like anybody else, I saw a post about doing some billboarding in a local community about getting money out of politics. This being near and dear to my heart, I showed up, and there was this guy, Frank, who also lives out here in Western PA. We talked, I learned about the organization, more about the bill we were billboarding for, and how that bill actually got going. So some things that impressed me about the organization early were just how they value small groups of people, getting out there, drumming up support, small efforts over time, just kind of adding up to political power. I valued knowledgeable people, how long they've been with the organization or otherwise doing political activism, And next thing you know, I was out canvassing neighborhoods with them, marched nearly 40 miles from Lancaster to Harrisburg. This was their 7th march at that point in time as an organization, hence the name, March on Harrisburg. And I went to 2 rallies even with them to talk to people with handing out flyers, getting folks just generally interested in what we were doing. So they'd call their legislators and provide people pressure. With March in Harrisburg, we're a nonviolent, nonpartisan nonprofit that works to provide social and political pressure on legislators to get bills passed that we support. We don't have a traditional leadership chain, and anyone who wants to work at organizing, leading, lobbying, or otherwise is more than welcome to join. March in Harrisburg, a little history on them. They got their start in 2016 during the 140-mile Democracy Spring March and has been fighting for anti-corruption laws ever since. We focus on 2 main categories of policies. They're divided, generally speaking, into money out and people in. So right now, we have our focus on 3 different policies, though one of them in particular is taking the lead. The first 2 are ranked choice voting push for fairer elections, which we do events like the Rank the Coffee or beer for, and we're always looking to get corporate money out of politics in another. But our main focus this session, however, has been pushing for a gift ban. This isn't the first time we've done this, and getting legislators in particular to sign a pledge right now saying they'll vote for a gift ban if it comes to the floor. So far, we've gotten quite a few signatures, but leadership in neither chamber has actually committed to pass it at this time. But we're getting more and more on that pledge itself. We're also starting to escalate pressure on the legislature by doing things in Westmoreland and Indiana, because these are key, because they are Senate leadership districts, right? So, of course, having champions for these money out or people in type policies and office seats is incredibly important to move our state forward towards an anti-corruption kind of focus. And we know that a lot of these these kind of bills and policies are supported by regular people. It just happens to not be the folks in charge, right? Any questions so far about what I've said? I've got some things to go over just about more information on how to take action with us, but anything in that list so far?
Right.
Yeah, I'd love to hear more about exactly like what the gift ban is. Like, you know, what are the rules now? What would the rules be? How would it affect them?
Sure. So generally speaking, for the gift ban, the things we focus on are the fact that right now, Pennsylvania is, I want to say it's like one of 3 states that have an unlimited cap that lobbyists can actually gift to a politician. So although you can't give a piece of pizza to like a police officer, you can give a $200,000 vacation, a big airplane, car, Cadillac, whatever you want, to an actual legislator. And that's something that we're trying to pull back on. Now, we don't have a gift ban bill specifically being pushed at this time, but there are multiple ones being pushed, and we've had one that's getting reinitiated in the actual session. So some from the past. Right now, we're working on both the House and the Senate for this, trying to get it so that dual chambers can kind of move forward because we know they can kind of drag their feet through the session. But it shouldn't target things like, hey, if a family member just gave you like a birthday gift, those sorts of things are excluded, of course. But we are looking at even things like $200 prime seat tickets to a ball game or something to that effect. Does that help answer that question?
Yeah, I thank you. It's not something that we've talked a lot about here, but it's very important, it sounds like.
Yeah, it's really interesting to me because I've lived in multiple states now, and just being in a state where I got here and they're like, oh yeah, there's an unlimited cap. I thought, what? No, that's not possible. There's got to be something there. Nope, there's an unlimited cap. So that's why we're pushing that one as a high priority right now, because that one definitely is money out and people in. Well, any other questions before I show just a little bit about what we're doing? Or anyone else?
David.
I'm not disputing the problem at all. I'm just wondering if you have any specific examples where it seems that someone in Pennsylvania has accepted a gift under suspicious circumstances.
So I wouldn't say they're suspicious in the sense that it's legal. That's probably part of the problem, right? So that's where we're focusing in this idea that it's actually legal to deliver these gifts as a lobbyist. But we know for sure, like in the past, there's been politicians who have accepted multi-$100 tickets for sport games. There's people who accept like huge meals or outlandish other gifts. But since some of these things don't have to be tracked, it's an under dollar amount, we don't have like a full list. But there are plenty of examples that could be probably drummed up for you if you really wanted them. Does that help? I know that that wasn't very, very specific, but
I was just curious, so thank you for your answer.
yeah.
So I hope that there may be a difference of opinion, but I hope it might be obvious where this is a concern, where if people can buy the influence and find their way to control a legislature's vote, that doesn't seem like they're going to be doing the right job in representing people. Our job at Forward Party is to try to help get people into office in a way that they're going to be representative of their community. We don't prescribe policy, but we think that it certainly should be with strong values in how they represent. March on Harrisburg is nonpartisan. They work with many independents and across many different parties. They have supporters probably from every party that you could find in Pennsylvania.
Yep.
And yet they continue to look for champions in office. So they'll spend a lot of time having people who volunteer with March on Harrisburg contact and reach out to existing office holders and try to help present these types of issues and help them understand why this is important to the voters and residents within Pennsylvania. If they could see that somebody ran for office on these types of issues and say, wow, we have an ally that's already there in Harrisburg or already within their community, that helps to strengthen the cause and move these things across the finish line. And that's one of the reasons why I look at March on Harrisburg as such a great collaborator for our party, along with many other organizations across the state. So, Danny, I know you had some other things that you wanted to share. Just wanted to interject that.
No, that was good. So I just wanted to share that, we do have actions going on all the time. We have 2 billboarding events coming up this weekend in Western PA. One's on the 22nd, one's on the 23rd. I can put that information in the chat if that's okay. But also I wanted to put the website, mopa.org, my contact information, and straight to our giftban.org website where you can actually even get like a giftban toolkit. There's more information specifically there. And I'll just put that in chat so people have it.
Great. Did anyone else have questions for Danny while he's with us? All right. Well, Dan, thank you very much for taking time to be here with us. You're welcome to stick around, but you may not be able to. I'm not sure what your circumstances are tonight. But certainly appreciate you sharing about what's happening with March on Harrisburg. One of the other things that will be coming up, I was going to mention this later, but I'll mention this here in case you haven't gotten word. Andrea and I have been in contact about another rank choice voting event in New Kensington. One of the neighboring businesses to the coffee shop. It's Strange Roots Brewery and Common Oven Pizza. There's going to be an opportunity to rank both pizza and beer at the same event. And that's going to be coming up the last Saturday of April in the afternoon. So anyone in Western Pennsylvania, you can mark that down. There'll be more information about that in the future. And this is a great opportunity for people from many different organizations to come together and celebrate ranked choice voting and help to introduce other people to the concept of RCV and how that can make a difference in elections. Yes, Brian.
And to everybody else on the call, I just want to point out like what Christian was just talking about. That is because he made a relationship with folks at March on Harrisburg and has been able to set up multiple ranked choice events, in partnership with them in his area.
Let's go.
That we can promote, and it's like teamwork. We're making contacts with their people, they make contact with our people. So we can all do that. You all have organizations in your area that are looking for, events and get people engaged. you can all do what Christian is, leading the way doing in your area. So please, if you have organizations that March on Harrisburg is there, all the other organizations we talk about are in your area, just make an event, make a relationship. We'll hold an event. It'd be great. Thank you, Christian.
Yeah, thank you, Brian. Yeah, the path to change is through collaboration. We have to find opportunities to work together if we really want to make change happen. That's how I approach things, and I believe that that's the thought process of most people that are involved here. So great. On with that, let's talk about another pro-democracy collaborator in the state, Fair Districts. And David, who spoke a minute ago, had shared the Slack channel. For those of you who aren't on Slack, we're going to drop that link back in the chat. It was also in the email that invited you to this call. We encourage you all to join the conversations there. But they are encouraging people to come out and join them on primary day to help educate people and get petitions signed for supporting fair districting. So we encourage you to consider that action and opportunity. We here at Forward are about finding candidates and getting people into office to help support these types of issues, but we also recognize the opportunity. Many of the people who work in these different organizations are looking for a pathway to run, or there's an opportunity for us to work together and support one another. And through building these relationships, even if it's something that you may consider running for office in the future, to be visible at the polls on primary day and greet people and make that relationship is a great first step to helping to make yourself known for a future run in office or to support somebody else's run for office. So what a great a great excuse to be out meeting those neighbors and community members and supporting a great pro-democracy collaborator here in the state of Pennsylvania.
Grass. Can't pick it up on the ropes.
All right. Give me 1 second. I got to jump back to my agenda to get my tabs are hiding from me. Oh, we're going to jump into the conversation around open primaries. Committee of 70, Ballot PA, or another couple of our collaborators. One of our state Congress members, Fitzpatrick, has been one of the authors of LAVA, which is the Let America Vote Act. One of our Forward affiliates that sits in office, Senator Biscola, is one of the authors for this state legislation. Both of these legislations are a pathway to allow independents to vote in primaries. So we have a lot of talk about the primary coming up May 20th, which for many of you are going to be able to participate in. You may have retained a party registration. Many of us are registered as independent or as Forward or with another party and don't have the opportunity to participate in those primaries under the current laws. So the good news is this conversation is becoming more robust and being paid attention to. The bad news is some of the solutions might not be the best ones. And I'm encouraging everyone on this call to figure out what you think is the right answer to represent you. So I'm not telling you what to support these bills or to go against these bills. I want to open up a conversation and encourage you to read them. For me, my concern, to be clear, is what they're going to authorize at this time, the way that the bills are currently written, is for independent voters to show up on primary day and choose either a Republican or a Democratic ballot. So you're going to be able to participate in that primary, but you can only choose one party or the other. I'm concerned that that doesn't represent the reason why I don't become a member of one of those parties. I might support somebody outside of just the Republican or Democratic ticket or across those party lines. One of the details that also goes along with this is if you participate the way that I read it, and I encourage you all to read, make your own decisions. If you participate in the primary election, if one of these bills would pass, you wouldn't have the opportunity to support or nominate a candidate for an independent or third party, such as Forward. So signing a petition for a friend who's running for office, if you voted in the primary, those two things would compete with one another. I took the time to read the bills, and that's what I got out of it. Somebody may know different or may know better. I don't think the people who proposed the legislation had that in mind. This probably had to do with negotiations, and somebody snuck in language that makes that happen. But it, for me, is a concern. And like I said, I just want to encourage everyone to look at these bills closely and figure out, is this a step in the right direction that we can then take across the finish line to get full voice and help us grow our party and help encourage other independents to have a voice in the elections? Or is this something that where we need to, um, challenge about having good representation on legislative change? So with that kind of introduction to the topic, I'll pause for a moment in case anyone wants to offer insight if they know more than what I've offered or something different. Or if you have any questions, I'll do my best to kind of answer or just kind of moderate a brief conversation about the law changes that are being proposed for independents to be able to vote in primaries. David.
I don't want to be dismissive of the concern that you just raised because I was not aware of that at all. I'm so glad that you noticed it and brought it to our attention. That's very frustrating. But when you were talking, I flashed back to an email that I think National Forward sent out a few weeks ago, basically acknowledging the fact that a lot of the legislation aimed at different kinds of electoral reform, like open primaries, has not been very successful in the last election cycle. So that seems like a factor worth considering, is even if one of these pieces of legislation is not ideal or has something in it you might consider a poison pill, it does send a message, maybe a message we don't intend if we don't support it, because then it may seem like there's not an appetite for that kind of reform, even though there actually is.
I think that's a fair comment and definitely worth considering. I can't say for sure how I would vote if this was a ballot initiative. Of course, here in the state of Pennsylvania, we don't have ballot initiatives. So at this time, we won't have that chance for direct action on this. It's going to be through lobbying and legislative efforts. But I think that even if we support it, we should let our voices be known that we only see it as a small step. And I'm speaking for everyone on this call is empowered to vote how they want. There's not a prescription to being a member of Forward, and certainly not for those who are just inquiring about Forward. So that's one of the things where we're not asking people to sign loyalty to a certain perspective. The goal would be to talk issues like this and many others that get into the more specifics of our communities and other things. We can discuss and view things differently and help one another think through the best solutions to really make progress in our state. So I think this issue actually is a great example of where there's probably a lot of different thoughts on this call, and at the end of the day, we might find some action that we could all be solid in. But there's certainly no mandate, or it's not going to become something that the PA Forward Party is taking specific action on, I don't think. Any additional questions or comments? If not, we can continue to move on. But I do hope that people will take a look at the specific legislation, consider what you think is the best action, and be able to continue having the conversation about how we can have our voices best heard and make a good influence on the state.
Christian,
Yes.
this is Isabel.
Oh, great. Hi,
Hey,
Isabel.
hi, I just have a question. The one part of the conversation that never seems to come up is being able to write in a candidate. When you're having a general discussion with people, everybody always thinks you can only choose whose name is actually written on the ballot. But there's never a discussion about write-in candidates. So while I understand the concern, I haven't read the legislation, obviously, I've just heard about it since you brought it up. But while I understand the concern, I think that even if it were even if there were a forwardist on there in written form, there's still the option, and correct me if I'm wrong, for somebody to write in a candidate if the primaries are open. Is that correct or not?
Well, that's an interesting way to use that system and combat it. The challenge for a writing campaign is certainly a higher bar than being on the ballot. But yes, in theory, if everyone at that point, you'd need those independent voters or forward voters to all say, request this specific ballot, whether it be the Republican or Democrat, and write in for this person. Because we don't have fusion voting, which in fusion voting, people could write in on either ballot, and there might be an opportunity to have a campaign that bring write-ins from both ballots together. But that would be an interesting way to use that kind of progress and combat it, because there's a lot more people that would have the opportunity to participate in that way. The other thing that it could do is help to identify those who really think independently, because there's a lot of people that, depending on where they live, might be registered with a party just to preserve their right to vote. And just being that ID alone to be able to identify those who are thinking outside of party boxes or party lines would give an opportunity for us to reach out and have conversations and try to run that type of campaign. So I do appreciate that thought and input. It would be a difficult challenge, but certainly one that would be a path. Ben.
Yeah, going off that, one of the strategies I would kind of like to see the forward party attempt to do at some point is if we're running in a race, we might, like a state representative race or something like that, we might consider having our candidate, while still pursuing the uh, nomination paper route, we should basically, actually, all the time, encourage them to campaign in the primary season and encourage voters to rate their name in the off chance that they win the primary as well, and they can still pursue. It would not. I don't think it would run afoul of the sore loser law, uh, for for them to continue to run as a forwardist, and that would be one way to get uh, to work the system in our advantage.
Yeah, so the one caution with that, and it is certainly surmountable, is what I read in the details was if you participate in the primary, you can't participate with nominating someone for a third party office. So anyone who who helps to sign petition papers or nomination papers for someone to run as an independent or third party.
That was
but
if one little point on that, Christian.
Mhm.
If you were reading the election code as written, it would say that you're not allowed to sign the nomination papers of third parties and independents. But there was a court case that changed that. So unless you're familiar with that case, the rules would be different.
Well, it would be interesting how that court case would apply to new legislation that passes, because I'm talking about the legislation that is proposed. So it's just a concern or a thought. Hopefully that court case would be the precedent and would allow for that. And it's great to find or think about the various ways that we can, you know, even with this imperfect progress, might find ways to utilize the system to help elevate people into office. So. Great. Is there any additional comments at this time on this proposed open primary? One other point that I just wanted to talk about on the open primary was the difference. So currently we have a closed primary system. And just to clarify some of the vocabulary, that means you have to be registered with either the Republican or Democrat Party to participate in the primary election. Those are taxpayer-funded elections, which is why this becomes a problem. If the parties were self-funding, it would be hard for us to have an argument that we should have a voice in those. We certainly don't welcome just anybody. Well, we're a pretty welcoming party, but there's plenty of parties that wouldn't welcome outside voices to nominate within their party. But the fact that our taxpayer dollars are funding those elections is why we feel like it definitely should be open. When it's open, there's that opportunity of choosing between one ballot or the other. And there's open to the unaffiliated, which means if you're not a Republican or Democrat, then you get to choose a ballot. And then there's a pure open, which means anyone who shows up to vote could choose one ballot or the other. There's some concerns over that type of openness, because then people in some instances have spoiled elections or tried to vote for the lesser candidate, thinking that it gave their true choice an advantage. If you can vote the other party's weak candidate, it might give your party's strong candidate an advantage. So there's some concerns in that type of thing. And then of course there's a top 2 or top 4 truly open primary where there's a merged ballot in that spring election, which allows all the candidates who are running to be on one ballot. And then the top, in California, it's 2. In some other places, it's 4. Brian, you can correct it. How many is it in Alaska? Is it 4 or 5?
Yeah, top 4 go on to the
Top
general
4
election.
move on.
Yeah.
So there's different variations on how that type can be. So there's a lot of different ways of how these things have been explored and implemented. All right, moving on to, in the agenda, we jump to April 20th, 4/20. And the reason, again, that I mentioned that date was for election purposes. For anyone who might consider running for office, this includes running as judge of election or inspector of elections, local council races, local mayoral races. These are the year of the local elections are the odd years. So to have your registration changed and have that change completed by April 20th, that's 30 days ahead of the primary, is what's required if you might consider running, or if you know anyone who you might encourage to run. You have to be unaffiliated or registered as the party that you're going to run as prior to that date. Oh. Jeff.
Yeah, this question I think is for Ben. A quick question. What about school boards? Because I think I remember in the past seeing people that were running both as Republican and Democrat. Do school boards different?
What happens when they do that is that they, depending on the race, they can sometimes appear in the primary, be nominated, and get nomination petitions in both parties, but I forget which races, and that might have changed. There have been efforts to limit that, But what can also happen is actually what happened with Zapala, where people will write their name in the primary and actually win both the Democratic primary and the Republican primary, so that when they come into November, they'll appear as the Democratic and Republican winner of the primaries, and unless a third party challenges them, they're going to win the race automatically.
Great. Any other questions about the current election, the upcoming elections? One more point of news for anyone in the western part of Pennsylvania, there is a special election happening in our area. We've not endorsed anyone in the race. However, there is a friend to the party that we've talked to with a few times, Adam Kita, that is running as a libertarian, that has been the only candidate in that race to respond to questionnaires and has given some responses that I think we would be supportive of. It would be an interesting result to have him join the state house, as it would be the tie-breaking vote. And there's a lot of positive reforms that he supports. So anyone in Western Pennsylvania, you might want to look into that race. There's still just a few days left to help support him if anyone chooses to individually. That opportunity is there. There is another special election happening in the race that I don't have as much information on. Someone who might be in that area, if you want to speak to it at all, or
I could jump in for that. So the 36th Senate District, which is northern Lancaster County, it's very Republican district. That senator went to work with Senator McCormick in Washington. So that's open. They're Democrat, Republican, and a Libertarian running there. And
have they given any good answers or questionnaire responses to issues that might be speaking to some of the foundational values that
so the one that I'm closest on that, so fair districts. So as part of the fair districts constituent, I do lobbying for fair districts as a constituent. And so we attempted to reach all the candidates. The Republican candidate completely ignored us, wouldn't respond. Like, we first tried to get a meeting, then we're like some sort of statement on gerrymandering, and wouldn't give us anything. Both the Democrat and the Libertarian actually met with us, and both were very supportive of redistricting reform or ending gerrymandering. So I think from my perspective, both those candidates are high quality candidates, and the Republican who's likely to win is ignoring it. There's also a League of Women Voters forum / debate, and the Republican didn't show up. The other two did.
Okay, great.
Some of us are meeting with Nicole Saval on Wednesday, a couple days from Wednesday, I guess it is, to talk about redistricting reform bill for fair districts.
Great. Thank you, Norma. All right. I'm going to go back to sharing my screen for just a minute for this next slide. A topic that we've intentionally not touched on yet this year. So we took a break for a few months. And please, this is not a hard sell, but we do need to touch on it. And that is fundraising. So we've intentionally been quiet on this because we know how exhausting the fundraising conversation can be, and it certainly was in 2024. Many of us probably are still getting emails and text messages from candidates. We operate on a very lean budget so that this doesn't have to be a major concern, and we certainly understand that not everybody is in position to want to or capable of supporting. But small gifts can make a big difference. So whether it's a one-time gift or consider a recurring monthly donation, even as little as $3 a month, helps us for our planning so that we can support the types of activities that we think are important to get champions in office. One of the things that we've decided that we want to do is let the lead of our fundraising really take place through offering return of value. So we're going to be getting a merchandise shop set up with PA specific merchandise, some shirts and coffee mugs and stickers, that sort of thing. So that'll be coming soon. We hope that you might consider that, because not only does that help to support us through putting a little money in the bank to support our efforts, but it also helps to spread the word. If you can put PA forward in front of some friends or neighbors, community members, it helps to allow people to know that we're here and what we're trying to accomplish. And volunteering with the fundraising team is another way that you may be able to give. So helping to get that merch store set up, or finding ways that we can low pressure approach people and invite people to support the efforts that we're doing to help make a difference in your community and across Pennsylvania. All right. That brings us to the open forum Q&A part of our evening. If no one has a specific question to kick off the night, I might offer to ask what types of actions. At our last couple of monthly meetings, we've been ending with kind of encouraging people to take action. So if anybody has any actions that they may have taken within their community, or conversations that they might encourage others on how to get involved with the politics of their local community. Jeff.
Yeah, I've actually been quite active, basically with the 5501, which is really an anti-Project 2025, get Congress to do its job. A lot of all the issues that are really going on right now. I've been to, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different rallies and protests in the last month. The largest one was in Harrisburg. There were about 1,000 people that marched from City Island to the state steps, just trying to get more people involved so that we get our Congress's attention so that they actually do their job. I've met a lot of people along the way. And in fact, I don't want to embarrass her, but you might see Patty Lawton here. She's sitting in on our call today. She was the Democratic nominee for state senator up in my area. So she's recently become an independent. I, just invited her to listen in on, what we're doing here for consideration, and if she has any advice, or if she can point other people that might be thinking the way that we think, over here to help us out. But there's a lot of involvement, and people are very upset at this point. So if you want to go out and help with this movement, which really, obviously, if we lose our Constitution, then what we're doing here becomes moot. So my thing is make sure we have the Constitution so that we actually can vote in the future. And if you have opportunities, if you go on the website 5501, you can click on events. They have events all over the place. But the next real big weekend is April 5th. There's going to be a big rally in Washington, D.C., but there'll be also local ones that you can go to if you can't travel there. Anybody that has any questions or wants to know more, just contact me and I'll let you know. Thanks.
Thanks, Jeff. Thanks for all your efforts in that and for the presentation that you did last month here at the meeting. There's lots of good feedback even after the meeting. We certainly appreciate your work in those ways. Anyone else have some local action that they'd like to talk about or other concerns? David?
A couple of months ago, several of us went to the Fair Districts PA. I forget if they called it the conference. I don't think that was the word they used. But it was in Harrisburg in December. And based on that meeting, I made a few modest contacts, and that led to my being added to their volunteer Slack. They have a volunteer Slack just like the Pennsylvania Forward Party does. I don't have much to report from that yet, but it just goes to show that even if you are like me and don't feel like you have a lot of time or energy to go to a lot of places in person, some of these online collaboration systems like Slack give you a chance to have a little bit of an eye and a little bit of activity in different organizations that are doing things similar to what the Forward Party is trying to do around the state.
Thank you, Dave.
And it's Isabel again. I can't find my little hand raising thing, so I'm just gonna speak up.
Great. Jump in.
So I have a couple of things, and Rachel, I'm gonna ask you to help me with Caroline's last name. But from the Women's Committee.
Anderson.
Caroline Anderson. So I met with her and she sent me to an organization for one of their 3-day summits called Democracy Solution Summit, and that was with Represent Women. And it was an amazing amazing people who are very active in on almost every organization that we mentioned today. I have some notes here that I can share maybe at another time, but if there are any women who are interested in running, representwomen.org is a good, seems to be a really good organization to go to. I'm still researching it. And then the other one is I went to my first League of Women Voters meeting, and I had joined it years ago and it was not active. But this one here in at least in central Pennsylvania in the Harrisburg region is phenomenal. They have things planned through the summer for their state conference. So, and I didn't realize how much education they did on voter rights and also registering voters. So just wanted to let you know that those are two organizations that I'm trying to become active in, as well as the Forward Party. So I want to put that out there.
Wonderful. Thank you, Isabel. That was Represent Women and the League of Women Voters, correct?
Correct.
Yeah, great, great. There really is an abundance of opportunities in Pennsylvania and really across the country. But if we can get all of these different groups connected and all of the positive energy and all of the people who really have the best for their communities and the best for the country in mind, there's some powerful things that could happen. But sometimes it takes being able to put some personal agendas aside or look for those opportunities to collaborate and step outside of our normal circles and find connectors and collaborators. All right. I'm going to jump back one more time to sharing if nobody else has their hand up. And try to look at some possible action steps that we might ask people to consider over the month. So continue to look for opportunities within your community to engage with other groups or with your local council meetings, just in your coffee shops, in your neighborhood, and understand the issues that are important to people. Join Slack, jump into the conversation, introduce yourself, bring those same issues that you discover in your neighborhood or in your community. Let's talk about them. Let's figure out, different ways of solving problems. A lot of times our issues are problems, but they don't always lead to solutions immediately. What are the solutions, or how can we investigate, the good, the bad, and get progress on how to move these issues forward. identify a race that you might encourage someone to run in. And so a lot of these are, can you tell? I really would love to see people engage in their community. It's a little repetitive, but that's what I would ask you to do. And if you aren't able to, I know time doesn't always allow for everyone to get out and join every meeting. But Slack is something that you can kind of hit up on your own time, and an opportunity to engage with one another, everyone who's on this call tonight, along with many others. So, any final questions or comments before we adjourn for the night? All right. Well, happy St. Patrick's Day to you all. Thank you for taking time. I hope you had an opportunity to celebrate over the weekend, and continue to strengthen our communities and make them more vibrant and celebratory. Have a great night.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.